I'm Harry Carey, and this is my dog Sparky. Say hi, Sparky. Good. I've got a special interview set up with you today. Let's go down to Harry Carey, who's with the philosopher Phaedo. Thanks, Harry. I'm here down here with Phaedo. So tell us, Phaedo, were you in prison when Socrates drank the poison?
Well, yes, Harry, I was.
Oh, wow, that's so interesting. Explain further about his death. What did he say in his last hours?
Did you not hear the proceedings at the trial?
No, that's why I'm asking you. What was the reason for him being put to death?
The reason was that the stern of the ship with the Athenians sent the Delos happened to have crowded on them the day before he was tried.
God, I love ships.
I do too.
What is this ship?
Well, Harry, this is the ship in which, as the Athenians say, Theseus went to Crete when he took with him the 14 youths and was a savior of them and all himself. And they were said to have vowed for Apollo at the time. And if they were saved, they would make an annual pilgrimage to Delos. Now this custom still continues, and the whole period of the voyage, and from Delos to the beginning of the feast of Apollo, crowns the stern of the ship is the holy season during which is not allowed to be polluted by public executions. And often, when the vessel is defined by adverse winds, there may be a very considerable delay. As I was saying, the ship was crowded on the day before the trial, and the Socrates lay in prison and was not put to death until long after he was condemned.
God, if I was Socrates, I'd hate to be alone. Tell me, did he have any friends with him?
There are several of his friends with him.
God, tell us, what was it like being with him and all that knowledge?
Well, Harry, I remember a strange feeling which came over me being with him, for I could hardly believe that I was in the presence and the death of a soon friend, and therefore I did not pity him. Ethicrates, his mien and his language were so noble and fearless in the hour of death that to me he appeared blessed. I thought that in going to the other world he could not be without a divine call, and that he would be happy if ever a man was. When he arrived here, and therefore I did not pity him, as he might seem natural at such a time, but neither could I feel the pleasure which I usually felt in it. Philosophical discourse for philosophy was the theme that we spoke. I was pleased and I was also pained, because I knew that he would soon die, and this strange mixture of feelings was shared by us all. We were laughing and weeping by turns, especially the excitable Apollodorus. You know the sort of man.
Who was there?
Of the native Athenians there were, besides Apollodorus, Critobulus, and his father Crito, Hermogenes, Epicgus, Aeschines, and Antithenus. Likewise, Ctesippus of the deme of Paeania, Menexenus, and some of others, but Plato, if I'm not mistaken, was ill.
God, I hate for there to be strangers there. Were there any strangers? Tell us, Phaedo.
Yes, there were some. Simmias the Theban, and Cebus, and Phidodontus, Elucid, and Turpison, who came from Megara.
Oh, please explain some more. Tell us the whole story.
I will. At the beginning and the endeavor to repeat the entire conversation, you must understand that we have been previously in the habit of assembling early in the morning at the court in which the trial was held, and which was not far from the prison. There was remained talking to one another until the opening of the prison doors, for they were not opened very early, and then went and generally passed the day with Socrates. On the early last morning, the meeting was earlier than usual. This was owing to our having heard the previous evening that the sacred ship had arrived from Delos, and therefore we agreed to meet very early at the accustomed place. On our going to the prison, the jailer who answered the door, instead of admitting to us that he came out and bade us and he wanted to call us, for the 11 he said, "Are you now with Socrates?" They are taking off his claims and giving orders to that the day he is to die. He soon returned and said that he might come in. On entering, we found Socrates just released from chains, and the Ziphite, whom you know sitting by him and holding his child in her arms. When she saw, she uttered a cry and said, "As women will, O Socrates, this is the last time that you will ever converse with your friends, or with you they will." Socrates turned out to Crito and said, "Crito, let someone take her home." Some of Crito's people accordingly led her away, crying out and beating herself. And And when she was gone, Socrates, sitting up on the couch, began to bend and rub his leg, saying as he rubbed, "How singular is this called pleasure, and how curiously related to pain, which he might, he thought, to the opposite of it. They fear and come to man together, and yet who know pursues earthly and generally compelled to take the other. They are two, and yet to grow together out of some herd or stem, and cannot help but thinking that Aesop had noticed them, he would have made a." And as to he, fable and God trying to reconcile their strife, and when he could not, he fastened their heads together. And this is the reason why they came with one another follows. As find in my own case pleasure comes following after my pain in my leg, which was caused by the chain.
God, I love chains. I have a lucky chain. That's why all my friends call me Shackles.
Shackles.
Well, you've heard it here. Back to you, Harry.
Phaedo.
Wow, that sure was interesting. I don't think I understood one word he said. But I also like ships and chains. Well, that does it all for this week's news. We'll see you next week. Cubs win.